Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
We are a small group of students, some from Hawaii and others from the mainland. Who are out here at our home at Halekoa inaugurating the new work. Toward the end of August, we were in Amsterdam, Holland, getting ready for the experience of the international conference which I talked to, and as usual before any of our public work, we spent hours and hours and hours in meditation. And on this particular night, Emma and I were meditating when the voice spoke to her, not to me, but to her, and told her to tell Joel to go home and to remain quietly at home. And to keep away from the public work. But knowing that we were beginning this 3-day conference, which was of great importance, Emma decided not to tell it to me until after the conference. But 2 days later, at the conference, we met this lady who was renowned throughout Holland and most of Europe, and who is indeed a tremendous spiritual light in the world. And we three, Emma and she and I, went to a room to have a meditation together. And while we were meditating, she said, "I have a message for Joel, that he is to go home immediately and remain there quietly in preparation for this next work." And she went on to tell us that whereas the work had been heretofore only among our own students, that from now on it would become a worldwide work with a deep significance for the entire world. And she told us some other very wonderful things about the message of the Infinite Way and its function in the world. But she made it very clear that this message had come to her, that I was to go home and be quiet in preparation for it. And then she looked at Emma and said, "Oh, you have already received this message. It has already been told to you." And of course it had. Well, with this confirmation, of course you know what happened. The conference ended on August 31st at 12 o'clock noon, and by 2 o'clock we were en route to the airport and took the plane to London, had dinner in London at the airport, and flew over the polar route to San Francisco and then home. And from then until the 1st of December, we maintained here a complete retreat. No one came here except in the course of home life and work. And it was a period of meditation, male and healing work, of course, because, as you know, healing work must go on always. And that means the male must go on always. But we stayed here in seclusion, not even going into town for a meal. And then, with the 1st of December, we began to have a student or two out here at the home. Until now, on the 19th, we have here about, well, there are 9 here now, but there are 12 in town, and a couple more coming, so that this month will be active. And it is possible that it will consist, the work that we do will consist mostly of meditation. But whatever it consists of, it will be at the direction of the voice. And that is the point that I want to emphasize at this point before we begin. It was in 1950 that I knew that this work was to come. And I was told that it would start in 1951, but in 1951 I was told that it was postponed for a year. In 1952 I was told that it would be postponed for 2 years. And then in 1954 I was told that it was postponed until I would be further notified. And then, of course, now we know that it has begun. You understand the reason for this. It isn't only that there is a right thing, because actually there is no such thing as a right thing, not even a right truth. If there were a right truth, it could come to any one of us at any time and produce its effects. But the right truth and the right time and the right readiness and the right preparedness, everything has to come at one time. That is why in our original Masonry there were 3 degrees. And you couldn't give the 3rd degree to a person who hadn't had the 1st degree. That was why at the building of King Solomon's temple, when this great master word was to be given, which was to free anyone who received it, no one could receive it until the completion of the building of the temple. That is symbolic of what we understand today in our spiritual teaching, that no one can be given the key to a temple until the temple has been erected. What value would a key be if there were no temple into which to fit it? That is why when such great revelations are given to the world, as was given to Moses, that is why he couldn't share it with the Hebrew people. He could share it only with Aaron. And then later he could share it only with the high priests. And even they were never allowed to voice the name of God, except one day a year, and then in the hidden secrecy of the inner shrine of the temple. Once a year they could go into that Holy of Holies and voice the name of God. The rest of the time it had to be kept hidden secret in consciousness. If a person were to keep hidden within their consciousness the name I am, and would never permit themselves to voice it, they would find also that within 3, 4, 5 years it would build them a new life, a new mind and a new body, new health, new home, new supply. Their entire world would be rebuilt if they could keep those hidden words, I am, in their consciousness and never breathe them out loud, never say them, never voice them. Keep them hidden in that inner sanctuary, and then the Lord that seeth in secret, the truth held secretly, sacredly in consciousness, would be made evident to the whole world. In that same way, then, the reason for these postponements probably had not so much to do with me as with those to whom the message would be revealed. In other words, they would have to be prepared for it. They would have to have 3 degrees, or they would have to wait for the erection of the temple, that is, of their new consciousness. Jesus cautions us about giving the milk of the Word, and then the meat, and also not to give holy things to the dogs. Throw not your pearls, cast not your pearls before swine. Not that it can do any harm, but it can't do any good. The only harm that it can do is if thought is unprepared for it. It can make an egotist out of the person who thinks they are God, and it can destroy them. It can't harm anyone else, and it can't harm the world. But the Word of God can destroy anybody who accepts it in an egotistical sense. That is, if they think that it applies to them instead of being a universal truth. Now, evidently, the world has been prepared during these years for whatever it is that is to come. I have no way of sitting in judgment as to who is ready and who isn't ready, nor is that my function. My function merely is that when the word is given to me, then I am to utter it. And that's the only responsibility I have. We have been told that you have not chosen me, I have chosen you. And so I assume that those who receive the word will be those who have been duly prepared and are ready for it, and will always be at the place where it is uttered. That's why I can assume no responsibility for it, beyond that of uttering it. I cannot invite, nor can I exclude. And this brings us to the nature of the work. Throughout the Infinite Way writings, you will find that it is very definitely stated that the books of the Infinite Way are not your salvation, and that they are not the truth. They are fingers pointing the way. They are guideposts leading you back to the kingdom within yourself, and everyone sooner or later has to recognize that fact. That a student who isn't prepared to live his life without those books is a student who has not attained. In other words, if you are cast out into a desert or in the middle of the ocean and you had none of the books with you, you are certainly not without your God. And if you do not know that, you are not ready. You are not yet attained. The place whereon thou standest is holy ground. And it doesn't say that you have to have books with you or clothing on your back or a checkbook. And until you can understand that as you are at this moment, or in any given moment of time, wherever and under whatever circumstances you may find yourself, the kingdom of God is within you. The place whereon thou standest is holy ground. We do not burn down our schools after we graduate from them. We do not burn up these books. And just as the wise person in life keeps returning to books throughout their entire experience and their scripture, I have come not yet to any point where I would leave even my own books alone. I perhaps read my own letters more than any student that we have. And the other writings I pick up as inspiration leads me to. But I can assure you I have no dependence on them. They are the sources of inspiration, and they are instruction in the letter, and that is important. Until one thoroughly knows the letter, the specific principles that are given in the Infinite Way writings, they better not leave them alone for too long. But the object of our work is to know them so thoroughly that we don't need them any longer. And that is the place to which we come. The letter of truth, the specific principles of life are so thoroughly embodied in our consciousness that we don't have to think them or write them or read them. I will just give as an illustration one principle, which incidentally is probably the most important one in all the Infinite Way writings. There is only one power, meaning that no person, no condition, no thought, no thing is power, since all power is the I that I am. I am the power. I embody within my own consciousness the infinity of power, and it operates on my body, on my pocketbook, on my business, on my practice, on my ministry, on the very trees in the garden. Embodied within the I that I am is the infinite God power, and it functions my life. Now, frankly, memorizing that statement, just as I have this moment spoken it, can have only one value. And that value would be that by virtue of memorizing it, we could carry it with us wherever we went, up in the plains and down in the submarines and out on the highways. To keep us single-tracked, single-minded, always holding us to the realization I am being faced with powers outside. Powers of sin, powers of disease, powers of lack, powers of depressions, powers of war, powers of bombs, powers of poisons. But I within myself am holding to this realization that these are not power. And it may be that 100 or 200 times a day that statement will return to me. Every time I see drunkenness, every time I see a headline of thievery, of delinquency, incompatibility, every time I see or hear a whisper of a second power, I have to return within myself. No, you don't fool me. I know that's an appearance. I realize that's a belief. I realize that's universally held throughout all the world. I know that the mind of man believes it. But I know better. I know that there is only one power, and that's God power, and that is embraced within my very own consciousness, since I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine. The kingdom of God is within me. I know that the place whereon I stand is holy ground. Nothing can enter me, my consciousness, my world, that defileth or maketh a lie. But you see that may be for a year or two or three, that I have to consciously, continuously bring that truth back to my consciousness, to hold myself in it, until the day comes when something within says, now look here, that's the truth, so why are you bother saying it? Now, why are you so busy declaring it? It's already the truth. Now you can forget it. And so one by one, these specific principles, which constitute the message of the infinite way are active in our consciousness, consciously active. But only for the purpose of holding us in that consciousness and not permitting the world's contrary beliefs entering or taking a hold of us. But just as you might send a young child out with his name and address written on it to keep in his pocket in case of emergency, and then when he's a little bit older, be sure that he knows his name and address and telephone number so that at any time he'll have access to it. So the day comes when you no longer think of your name and address and telephone number. Why? Because it's so well established in you that you don't any longer have to consciously go out in the morning and say, my name is Joel Goldsmith and I live so-and-so. And so it is with the correct letter of truth has to be known. But it has to be known so that you can eventually forget it. And yet never forget it. Never can it be out of your consciousness. Never can you get to the place where it isn't instantly available for the instruction of others. Even though you yourself will have no further use of it, because, and this is it, there is a something called Christ. I do not know how to define it. I do not know how to explain it. There is such a thing called the Christ. It's an active reality. It's a live being. It's a vital essence or presence or power. But in the early years of our experience, all we can do is declare that, or know it, or repeat it, or affirm it, but we do not experience it. Even while we are saying that the kingdom of God is within me, and Christ liveth in me, it isn't true. It is only true as a potentiality. Just as we may say of every thief in prison, you have honesty and integrity. It isn't true at that particular point. It is only true as a potentiality. If they really had the honesty and the integrity, they wouldn't be there. It's only that they have it in their inner being, just as each one of us has this Christ, and they too. But so far as a demonstrated state of being is concerned, it is not true. Now, while we are in the student stage, where we are declaring God's presence, affirming God's presence, voicing God's presence, knowing God's presence, we are not yet at the stage where the presence of God is demonstrably realized. Now, that point of demarcation is to be understood in words like attainment or realization. In other words, you may declare from now till doomsday that Christ is within you and the kingdom of God is present where you are and Christ liveth my life, but it is not yet true. It does not become a demonstrable truth until a certain moment when you pass into a state that is called realization or attainment or fulfillment. Probably in the Oriental world, the word mostly used is attainment, in the Occidental world, the word is realized or realization. God realization, Christ realization. God consciousness or Christ consciousness, consciousness of Christ. There comes a period, a specific moment when you pass from being the man of earth to being the man who has his foundation in Christ, has his being in Christ. The experience has been called many names. Often it's thought of as cosmic consciousness or the cosmic experience, but the word spiritual is more nearly correct. Spiritual consciousness, spiritual realization. What we call Christ realization, the Orientals called Buddha nature. And when they attain it in the highest, it's almost a nirvana, samadhi. But those more nearly refer to individual experiences in time and space, whereas the Christ experience is not like that. The Christ experience is like attaining Buddhahood or attaining Christ consciousness. When you attain Buddhahood or when you attain Christ consciousness, you have actually reached the place in experience when you are no longer entirely human. Up to that time, you can say, I am divine, I am spiritual, I am immortal, but it isn't true. It is only true of your potential being, not of your attained being. Just as you can look at the seed of a papaya tree and say this is papaya, which it is, but only potentially. You can't eat it yet. You have to await its fulfillment before you have fruitage. And so it is, within each of us is the seed of Christhood. And we can, in the absolute, say, I am Christ. But all we have to do is look at our human conduct for a little while, and we will quickly understand that we really aren't. We are only potentially Christ. And it's for this reason that so many people can say, I am the bread, and I am the wine, and I am the water. And they're still hungry and thirsty. And that is why so many ministers of the Word can get up on the platform and say, I am the life, and I am the way, and I am the truth, and their congregations are still not fed. There is a specific point in the experience of each individual when they pass from the necessity of living their human lives humanly, and they pass into that state where they live by grace. I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. It overshadows us. It is always as if it were a presence over our shoulder or within us. It is always there. And that is why whenever you come into the presence of a person who has attained, not merely studied it and can talk the message, but one who has attained that particular moment of realization, you can feel that presence. And as you've read in the books or tapes, if there is a minister who has attained that, you can enter his church and feel it. It makes no difference whether it's a Hebrew synagogue or a Protestant church or a Catholic church. Or an Oriental one of any denomination or belief. If an individual has attained it, the room takes it on. The edifice takes it on. Their clothing takes it on. And those who come into its presence can know it. And those who are spiritually attuned immediately love it and take on its warmth and its glow. But those who are not ready for the spiritual experience hate it, and they become fighters of it. That is why Paul said that the human mind is enmity against God. That is where the term Antichrist comes from. There are those who, the very moment they come anywhere near the Christ Spirit, they begin to fight it and everything that it represents. On our Pastor Up Front program on television last Sunday. Oh, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was the... Where was it? Well, anyhow, this was a minister in New York. Yes, a minister in New York. That's where it happened. Who got into a streetcar. And at one stop, some girls who had been at a religious meeting of some kind got on the streetcar humming a hymn. And others heard it and picked it up, and then this minister hearing it began to sing it, and they joined in, and first thing you know, nearly everybody in the streetcar was singing hymns going through the streets of New York. When they finished one of these hymns, one woman looked up and said, "For God's sake, stop that. Isn't there any place where a person can go and have peace even in a streetcar?" And as soon as the car stopped, she got up and went out. You know the conflict that must have aroused in her to come face to face with anything spiritual, and she probably had to face something within herself that she couldn't take. And so it is that wherever there isn't a readiness for a spiritual way, it breeds antagonism. And instead of coming into a feeling of peace and joy when they come into the presence of a spiritually illumined person, it immediately arouses the worst in them, and they start fighting. And they not only fight themselves, but they fight anything or any person that seems to have any of it. Now, this point then that we are coming to is that point of transition to where something of a spiritual nature takes over the consciousness of an individual and begins to function through them. It's true, you already have it. It's true, you already are it. But it is not true that you are yet demonstrating it, because the experience itself must come to you. This is the experience you've heard me speak of as the one that came to me in the end of 1928 in Detroit, Michigan. It is the one that was responsible for, within 3 days, putting me in healing work, and within 18 months taking me out of the business world and making me a practitioner. And it is the one which has governed every step of my career from that moment to this. It's brought me into some very tight places and very unhappy experiences, and then through them and then out of them. Not because it would guide me into trouble, because in my humanhood those experiences were necessary. You see, now, every day of the week, thousands of people, think of it, thousands of people every day of the week fly over the North Pole. And now go back and think of the dozens of men that lost their lives trying to reach there. And without any effort, and without any cold, and without any inconvenience, we fly right over it. But you see, that was all because these first men died and suffered. So it is. No one has to suffer in Christ consciousness. But the pathway has to be explored. And none of us knows the route, not any more than you know it at this moment. You haven't the faintest idea what direction your feet will be led in once you are touched with this thing. And it may be away from everything that you consider normal, natural, and good. If you knew that the way in which you were being led was the right one for you, you just follow meekly. But not knowing it, you try to cling to positions outgrown. You try to cling to yesterday. You try to cling to yesterday's manner. And I have done the same thing. Not consciously, because all my life I have longed to go the spiritual way. But if you don't know which way that is, your human experience makes you go contrary to it. And it points out what it knows to be good, which spiritually isn't good at all. Now, I'm impressing on you the fact that, first, no progress is going to be made spiritually if you do not know the correct letter of truth. Secondly, knowing it is only one step of progress. The second step is practicing it, that is, applying it to every circumstance that comes up, whether it's lost baggage or whether it's lumps or fevers or lack or limitation, whether it's business problems, family problems, health problems, whether the problems are your own or your family's or patients or students, you will make very little progress until you begin practicing these principles and witness the fruitage. Every time you bear witness to a healing through the knowledge of these principles, you are making your real progress. And the more of these proofs that you have, the more of these so-called demonstrations that you have, the more progress you are making, because you are attaining not only the inner conviction and the fruitage of practice, but what is most important is that with each practicing of these principles, your consciousness is melting, your human consciousness is dissolving, and your spiritual consciousness is evolving. Don't forget, this seed of our spiritual consciousness is buried under the layers of our centuries of human consciousness. That's why we all have racial traits, national traits, family traits. Those are the things that constitute our human consciousness. And those are the things that are interfering with the revelation of our spiritual consciousness. We have to eventually get to the place where we have no race, we have no religion, and we have no nation. Where we pay lip service to these by obedience to the rules and regulations of our immediate society, but inwardly we have risen so far above them that we can truthfully say, I'm neither Jew nor Gentile, neither bond nor free, neither American, neither Occidental nor Oriental. I am what I am, and all men are the same in my inner life. Then when you've reached that and lost nationalism and racialism and religion, then you can be obedient to the rules and laws of every nation, and you can enjoy any and every religion and the people of all the world. But not until then. Practice these principles, take every opportunity to do healing work. And even when you're not asked for it, when you see or hear appearances of discord, begin the application of these principles, because you're developing yourself. You are dissolving humanhood, bringing to light the spiritual consciousness, and then in a moment that ye know not of, the bridegroom cometh. In a moment that ye think not, the bridegroom cometh. In a moment that ye think not, an act of grace takes place within you. And when that act of grace takes place, something happens. Last night here, we didn't get to the mail until midnight. And at midnight I went inside to the office to dictate the mail, and Emma made some coffee and came in and sat down. And after each letter, I meditated, or before, as occasion required, and evidently the night was auspicious because I was getting beautiful responses to my work. And one of these letters was from a rather elderly lady in Desert Hot Springs, and I had a beautiful response in my work for her. And this morning at breakfast the telephone rang, and here was her daughter on the phone to say that it was the best night she has had in 2 years and the first night that she slept from midnight to 5 in the morning. Now that's exactly what I'm trying to say to you, that when contact is made and the spirit is alive, that is when it is felt. Not just declaring that I am the way, not declaring that I am Christ, not declaring that I am spiritual. That isn't a power. That's only the power to help us toward the realization of it. But when the realization itself is there, when the presence itself is there, it does the work. When the presence itself is there, it lives your life. It goes before you to make the crooked places straight. You remember how many times I've said in class that it had to be the presence that went to England and had Alan Unwin and Ellen Fowler publish Infinite Way writings. It had to be a divine influence that could go down into Harper and Brothers and get them to publish Infinite Way books. It has always had to be, in my experience, this spiritual presence that financed all of this work. You know that. You have seen it over and over and over again. And so it is that without it, Paul knew what he meant when he said, we are just tinkling cymbals. That's all. We are nothing. We're just human beings, some better, some worse. But in that moment of transition, there's no need for words anymore, no need for thoughts. Because I am not performing it, and I am not doing it, but it is. And my function is to be still and let it have outlet. That is where we are when each student of the Infinite Way has to realize not only that I am of my own self nothing, and that I am and can of my own self do nothing, but that there is a Father within me. And abide in that until the experience takes place and the Father announces itself and takes over. And then our function after that is just to meditate. Listen. Let it come through. Let it perform its work. But then, very frankly, you really can't get out of bed in the morning until you have made room for it to take over. You just cannot leave your home until you have the assurance, the feel of that presence. And of course you wouldn't ever believe that you are helping a patient or a student or a member of your family if you didn't have that flow. But then after you have that, you wouldn't doubt it. And of course you would know the rest of the secret then, that the degree of their benefit from it would be the degree of their own receptivity. Then you'd know how much of a part it plays in us. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. It isn't possible for Jesus Christ to do what the Protestant Church thinks he does. Die on the cross and save them from the penalty of all their sins. Oh no. No, you must forgive 70 times 7, not for the sake of the person you're forgiving, for your own sake. It's your demonstration. You must love your neighbor as yourself, but not for their sake. They may be the very ones to crucify you. That can't make any difference to you, because you're not doing it for their sake. And all of these people who go around believing that they want to do good for the world, they're just self-hypnotized with their own ego. You can't do good for the world. Many a good man and woman's been hung and crucified for believing they could do good for the world. All you can do is do good for yourself. Attain your Christhood, and then let it do for the world what it will. But the minute you try to point it in somebody's direction and say, I'm going to save you, that's when you are lost. You don't know who is at the point of receptivity. You don't know. It probably is the most unlikely one that you could think of who will get the greatest benefit. It isn't your function to be concerned whether it's your own relatives or somebody else's, because you have no control over that. And so you learn that it is literally true that as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Not as Jesus Christ sows, so shall ye reap. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. And so the responsibility is to forget the world. You're not going to save the world. Nobody has saved it yet. If the Christ has saved me, it has saved me, but not the world. If it has saved thousands in the world, it has saved thousands in the world, but not the world. If Jesus says, I have overcome the world, he doesn't say the world has been overcome. He only says, I have overcome the world. Go ye and do likewise. This is an individual thing, and that is why mysticism can never flourish except in a nation of individuals. It can never flourish under socialism or communism. It can never flourish under social security, because the dependence, consciously or unconsciously, is on the government. The dependence is on the security. The dependence is on collectivism. It is like in union there is strength. That statement is repeated over and over and over again, and it isn't true. It isn't true. You can see that in the world history today. 7/10 of the world is united against 3/10 of it, and the 3/10 of it are keeping them hopping. All the rest of this free world, they all act like tenderfeet, and the other fellow's got a gun shooting at their feet and making them dance. And that's exactly what Russia is doing to this country and to England and to France and all the countries of the world. Make us dance to their tune. We don't dare have a voice in the history of the world. We don't dare tell Russia what we'd like to do and then go and do it. We ask them first. And then we consult with our allies. And then we agree to do it after we say we won't. Why? Because we've lost our individuality. And they've gained theirs by virtue of the fact that they've taken it away from the population and put it in the hands of 1 man or 12 men. Now with them it's a temporary success. In the end they'll be swallowed up. Because the 1 or the 2 men will pass from the scene and there's no other individuals left there. Here an individual will pop up one of these days with the courage to be an individual. And if not here, it'll be in England. If not in England, it'll be in Canada. It'll be in one of the free countries that an individual will raise up, another Theodore Roosevelt will come to life. And then we'll see the free world reestablished. And now remember, mysticism or conscious union with God or the spiritual experience can only come to an individual. Regardless of my voicing this, regardless of my actual consciousness of the presence here, I can't be assured of your experiences. I can't make you experience it. And it may be that one person in the room or two will come to it and not the others. Why? Not because of my will. It's because as ye sow, so shall ye reap. It's an absolutely individual thing, and it can't be experienced collectively. And even if each one of us, every one of us in this room were to experience it, it still would not be a collective experience. It still would be each individual experiencing it themselves. So it is. A Rickenbacker demonstrates this, and 6 other people with him benefit by it, but the 6 other people still amount to nothing, whereas he's going on to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because just as Jesus could feed the multitudes, so did Rickenbacker feed his. But where are the multitudes that the Master fed? And where are the 6 that benefited by being with Rickenbacker? It's an individual experience. One Christ can help 1 billion people across, but he can only help them across. They themselves must walk that path. Now, in your own experience, and more particularly for those who come to you, don't try to take them across this thing tomorrow or the day after tomorrow and think you're going to save them 7 years of study and work. Be emphatic. They must know the correct letter of truth, and then knowing it, they must practice it. If they know it and practice it, they too will be led to where the consciousness itself will take over. All right, with that now we'll meditate.